everyone, and welcome to the Parenting Issues podcast, where we dive into the real challenges and practical advice for raising healthy, happy kids. I'm your host, Nicole Brody, and today we have a very special guest with us, Michelle Wayman. Michelle is a licensed professional counselor, synergetic play therapist, supervisor, parent coach, and most importantly, a mum herself. Michelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this topic today.
Absolutely. So today's episode is all about how parental emotions shape kids, the importance of play therapy, of course, and parent authenticity can really help in managing the emotional dynamics at home. So let's dive right in. How do you see parental emotions influencing children, especially in their early years?
So great question. Parents are really their first emotional regulators for their kids. They're the external regulator. And we see this right from the beginning. If you think about a parent rocking a newborn baby, the baby's upset, they're dysregulated. As a parent, it's really dysregulating and upsetting when you have a kid who's having a hard time and can't settle. And so what do? We walk over to the baby, we pick them up, and we rock them back
Totally.
and forth. And as we're rocking, it is helping calm their nervous system. It's helping regulate them. And it's also regulating for us to have that emotional support. And so, even from the very beginning, the way that parents respond to their kids' behaviors, their big emotions, their own big emotions and stress really starts to shape the way that kids learn about their own feelings and how to manage them.
Wow, oh, wonderful. That's really powerful. And could you explain perhaps a bit more about what happens when parents aren't aware, right, of their emotional responses, and that can like affect the kids, and just share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when parents aren't aware, one thing that happens, and this is just all over the place these days, I see it on social media all the time, is that parents get the message constantly that they just need to be calm. No matter what's going on, no matter how big your kid's behavior is getting, you should always just stay calm. As a therapist and a mom myself, that is super unrealistic to think that we can just be calm 100% of the time.
Right.
It's Right. It's actually really dysregulating if we're feeling one thing, but telling ourselves we have to feel something different. Dysregulates our own nervous system. And actually, it can cause more dysregulation in the kids because it sends a really confusing message that the feeling and the expression isn't matching up. So, if you've ever been around an adult and you've been out to like coffee with them and you're like, hey, how's it going? And they just look at you and they're like, I'm fine. Don't believe them. You don't believe them, right? Because what they're saying and their facial expressions, the body language, the tone, just even the energy is different than what they're communicating. And in biological terms, we call that incongruence in the environment.
Mhm.
Incongruence is actually one of the four major threats that our brain is scanning for. And when we experience a threat to our own safety, it causes dysregulation. And kids totally feel that too when mom and dad are not being authentic. And what can happen, and this is kind of like big news for a lot of parents, is that kids will sometimes actually amp up their behavior, turn up the volume on them to force parents into authenticity, meaning sometimes they snap, they yell, they lose control, they walk away. Because even though, yeah, like it's scary to see mom and dad like that, at least now the threat of incongruence is out of the dynamic. And it's like, whew, okay, like I get it. Mom's mad. Got it.
So you're saying they pick up actually on our energy almost, and know that we're faking it a little bit?
Yes. Yep. And like I said, if you think about times in your life where you're like, I don't believe what this person is saying, like something just feels off about it. Kids have the same thing just built into the wiring in their brains.
Yeah, so interesting. And before my kind of going a little bit further, I think something that you spoke about is so important. And I feel it as a mum of three. When you spoke about the pressure on social media and everyone, especially when you have these influencers and they all seem so relaxed 24/7. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on us mums that if we do feel frustrated and angry or not regulated, then something's wrong with us, right? So So I'm really happy that you spoke about that. And it was just so insightful. So it's really important for parents to be aware of their emotional state so they can be honest, like you said, and authentic when their kids, with their kids. So, and tell the truth, right? Be human.
Absolutely. So important.
So you are a synergetic play therapist. For parents who aren't really familiar what that is, what it means, can you share how play therapy works and why is it so beneficial for children?
Absolutely. So play therapy in and of itself is one of the primary ways that therapy is done with kids. Play is the primary language of kids. So they don't come into my office and sit on the couch and, to say, oh, I had a really challenging week and I was feeling this way. They instead come in and they show it. They play out whatever it is that they're going through on the toys, through dress up, through pretend, through sand tray, through art. We have lots of different ways that kids can explore and express their inner world and their emotions. In synergetic play therapy, or SPT for short, we take that a step further by, yes, they're still exploring their own world, but we pair that with authentic naming of what the feelings are that we're experiencing, and then adding in the moment, emotional regulation. So kids get a lot of practice at that. Okay, what is this feeling that's coming up for me? And now what do I do with it? And through repetition over and over and over again, that actually rewires and repatterns kids' nervous system so they're now able to deal with the overwhelming feelings and challenges that they're experiencing.
Oh, amazing. I think everyone should stop for a little moment and get a pad and pen out to write some of these notes. So how does this relate to parent authenticity?
Yeah, so I work with parents very closely when I'm doing play therapy. I also do parent coaching, so sometimes I'm actually just working with parents and not with kids. But I teach parents a lot of what I do in the playroom in the sense of how to name your feelings that are coming up, how to learn more about how to regulate your own nervous system so you can teach your kids through modeling. There's so much of what I do in SPT that's transferable to parents. And some of that just starts with building awareness, learning to name your feelings, and then learning how to regulate them in a way that feels natural for you. And that's one of the great things about this approach is that whether it's in play therapy or I'm working with a parent, it's not forced. It really honors who everybody is as an individual and how they can best support themselves.
Wonderful. And do you maybe have any, for the mums listening or the parents listening now, do you have any quick kind of tips or games that one can do, just simple without overwhelming, without the overwhelm that someone could just write down now so they can implement today even?
Yeah. So much of this is really subjective. And as we've kind of spoken about a lot already, the first step is self awareness. So, when you're in a moment with a kid where you start to notice things are feeling heightened, if you're able to notice it, take a moment, stop and reflect and go, like, what am I feeling right now? What is this feeling? And maybe you're feeling more than one thing and figure that out and then name it. I think a lot of parents get worried that in naming their feelings to their kids, they're going to dump on them and it's going to be too much. And like, I get that. We don't want to dump our feelings on our kids, but there is a way to do this in a way that is developmentally age appropriate that can actually teach them, oh, this is what mad looks like. This is what frustration looks like. It also builds empathy. Oh, like, oh, this person's feeling sad in front of me. So if we're aware and we're mindful of how we're feeling, the likelihood of us dumping isn't really the case. So becoming aware, asking the question, thinking, what am I feeling? Naming it. And then the step two of that is bringing in the regulation. And for a lot of parents, this does take work. If you grew up in a household where it wasn't safe to have feelings, where that wasn't something that was really honored or structured, it might even be hard to conceptualize being authentic with my emotions. Like it was never safe to be authentic. So for some parents, I just want to name that it might take some support to figure that out for yourself so you can teach that to your kids. This is what I do in parent coaching. A lot of people like me offer that as well. But it really is coming back to what we were saying, that first step of awareness, naming it, and then supporting yourself, supporting your own nervous system so that your kid can look at it and go, oh, those are options for me to deal with how I'm feeling when I feel that way. Um, I can illustrate this perfectly this morning, had the perfect example come up. I have a toddler. We were getting ready for preschool. It was time to get on the potty. And I sat her down, and first thing she did was pop me in the face. And I thought I was going to show up today with a black eye, to be
Oh,
honest.
God.
And I took a moment. I noticed how my body was feeling, and I felt incredibly sad. And I
Mhm.
just looked at her and I said, gosh, I'm feeling really sad about what just happened. And she looked at me too. And she gave me a hug. And she gave me a
Oh,
kiss. And she apologized. And then I said, I need to take another deep breath because this feels hard right now. And then we kind of regulated the moment together and then we talked about it. So it allowed me to be myself. She got to be herself. And then we moved through it together. And I think we both learned something. But I didn't feed into the dysregulation by going, oh, I just got to stay calm. Like, don't hit me again,
yeah.
which is the way a lot of parents feel. So I would say developing that authenticity is really important.
Wonderful. And I think even on the other extreme, you didn't get angry and frustrated. You took the minute to self-regulate, which I guess in turn, when children mirror us, it teaches her to self-regulate too. And do you think that this also this this way it almost extends into the kindergarten, and for them to be able to identify in the classroom, kindergarten, how to regulate and how to identify friends when they're feeling sad? Do you think that that has an impact, outside of the house?
Absolutely. So this really teaches emotional intelligence and that skill of empathy to be like, okay, when I, said this to a friend and I saw what their face looked like, okay, I kind of intuitively know how I'm feeling. Or somebody takes a toy away from me that I don't like. If I've seen another adult model, wow, I'm angry, I need to take a deep breath, or wow, I'm angry, I need to take a break and walk away. Now I can do that as a kid if I've seen it repeatedly over and that's the thing, the rewiring and the repatterning is possible, but it takes repetition. So it really does extend. And I tell parents this all the time. If your kids can learn these skills at an early stage of life, it goes with them into adulthood because as adults, we do not stop facing challenging experiences ourselves. And it just gets amplified as a parent because now you're seeing your kid play out sometimes all this stuff that you didn't know how to deal with as a kid yourself. So it's actually an opportunity for everybody to heal as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like this type of therapy isn't just for the child, right? I feel like this
Mhm.
is amazing for the parent and something that they can take also outside of their house when in work and everything to regulate and share how they're feeling. Because again, the social media and all these different things these days make us feel not only in the home as parents, but in different environments that we always have to just, be this specific person. So I think it helps on all levels, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's no one right way to be. There's no copy and paste. There's just you getting to be yourself and your kid being themselves and going through it honestly together.
Yeah, amazing. So insightful. Before we move on, I personally want to recommend an amazing tool that can help parents bring more structure and fun into their daily routines. Levelty. Levelty is a chore tracker with rewards designed specifically for kids and parents. It helps turn parenting into a shared adventure, allowing families to play, connect, and grow together. Not only can it help with creating healthy routines for your kids, but it also brings in the element of fun by rewarding them for their accomplishments. So, if you're looking for an easy and effective way to teach responsibility while spending quality time with your kids, check out Levelty. It's a great way to nurture an atmosphere of unconditional love and play at home. I use it myself and I highly recommend it. So, Michelle, For parents who are listening and are thinking, this sounds great, but how do I start applying this at home? And I know you've mentioned it a little bit, but what are some practical steps? If you could give another example of how they can take this to a more authentic space in their parenting.
Yeah. So I know I've spoken a lot about like the awareness and the authenticity part of it. And I said a lot that a lot of this really depends on parents
Mhm.
honing those skills. And so I can speak a little bit to that if that's helpful. One of the best ways to start honing the skill is even outside of the context with your kids. Like that is always helpful. But for some of us, if it like I said, if it doesn't feel safe or it doesn't feel natural or it doesn't feel uncomfortable, we might have to do a lot of our own practice. And so setting reminders like during different points in the day to check in and just start to notice the body. I know sometimes people go, oh, like, I don't want to get into that like somatic stuff. It's
I love that
really
stuff, by the way.
I do too, but it's actually not that weird because the reason connection to the body is so important is because our body is the first thing that starts giving us clues and signals when dysregulation happens. So if I can check in and notice like my chest is feeling kind of tight and like it's hard for me to take a deep breath, now I might go, oh, like I'm feeling a little bit anxious right now. Oh, I didn't realize that. All right, let me offer something supportive to my body and my nervous system. And that's where some of the practice and playing around might go because no two people are going to regulate the same way. I do talk a lot about taking deep breaths because taking a deep breath is like the brakes on the nervous system. But sometimes a deep breath isn't what's needed. Sometimes what's needed is like, oh, if my chest feels tight, maybe I'm going to like rub my chest or I'm going to like give myself a little bit of deep pressure or massage or I'm going to touch my head and just kind of rock back and forth. And so I really encourage parents to practice that. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to notice my body. I'm going to get curious about what I might be feeling. And then I'm going to explore and play around with how can I move that dysregulation around in my body and offer myself the support that I need. I'm a super tactile person. So I'm wearing like 4 rings right now because I know that when I'm talking to people or I'm even just sitting on the couch, I need to do something with my fingers. That's something I've learned about myself. Some people are totally different. So starting to explore that because then when you take that to interactions with your kid, it's easier. You're like, oh, I notice how I'm feeling. I know what I need. I'm going to support myself, and my kid's going to learn from watching me do it. It's amazing.
I love that. And I was just thinking as you were speaking in terms of you were really mentioning about self-regulation. And if you're a mother listening or a father listening, perhaps you're not listening as a couple. If you're with someone, if you have a partner, how would you share this with a partner and explain to them in a really simple way? Just say perhaps you are able to self-regulate, but your partner isn't, and you're seeing that and you're frustrated with, because let's face it, sometimes that happens, right? We're not sharing always the same parenting path, if we have a partner. So do you have any tips for someone who perhaps wants to share this with their partner and doesn't actually know how to say it without making them feel like they're not doing a good job at parenting, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. So similar with kids, and it kind of depends on who the partner is, if they're open and receptive to it, if they're not. I do talk with parents about this a lot because the situation you're describing is incredibly common. Sometimes one parent is like, "Yeah, I want to jump in and do this type of approach," and some parents are like, "No, like I don't have the capacity to do that. Like they just need to listen and shape up." Similar to kids and helping rewire their brains and nervous systems, by modeling, you can actually do the same thing with your partner. It's kind of
Oh,
sneaky. If you don't feel like you can teach them or it doesn't feel like, oh, that's going to be received well, you are always allowed to be authentic. You always have permission to be yourself. So trying like if you're having a challenging conversation with your partner and your feelings are hurt, stopping and maybe putting a hand on your heart and taking a deep breath and going, wow, like that feels hurtful to me right now. And I just want you to know that often that is disruptive enough in the conversational pattern that it causes a moment of reflection for the partner too. And I could go into more detail here, but because of mirror neurons, whatever I am projecting back out there and naming and regulating is triggering a moment of reflection in the person I'm with, even if they're not consciously aware of it. And so there is a way to teach this, just like with kids, through modeling. If you don't feel comfortable giving them a lecture, or if you don't feel like they would be receptive to it, you can share it just by practicing authenticity with your partner. And I have seen this shift a lot of relationships without there ever being discussion of like, this is how we should do it. Um, but in addition to that, too, I guess I would say I always invite a lot of curiosity because nobody wants to be told that what they're doing is bad or wrong. So inviting curiosity and like, hey, I'm wondering, when you're talking to our kid that way, um, does that feel helpful? Now you have to say it in a way that's not condescending, but, like, how do they respond? Like, is that typically getting them to do what you want them to do? And, I've been trying it a different way, and this is just what I'm noticing. And, what do you think about, having a conversation about that? But curiosity, is key when you wanna approach something with somebody in a way that's not threatening.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that is super helpful. Uh, and what sometimes I feel parents, have is a problem of actually being able to identify their own feelings. So before you mentioned with your daughter, you said, "I'm feeling very." What did you say? What was it?
And
Not
incredibly sad.
sad.
Yeah, sad.
Sad, right?
Mhm.
So do you have any tips for or some kind of task or a little bit of homework maybe for some listeners to be able to understand how they're feeling? Because I know it sounds weird, but I know even for myself, you just you get angry or frustrated, but to be able to articulate that into a more with more words, let's say,
Yes.
maybe you could
Yep.
share a few words so people can write down notes and they can learn about how they're feeling.
Totally. Yeah. So for people who this is super new concept,
Mhm.
one exercise that it's going to sound super weird, but it's actually really fun, is to play a game called How Do I Know? And it's how do I know that I'm blank, blank, blank? And the first thing you do is you start to go like, how do I know that I'm hungry? And then you write down, yeah, what are the sensations in my body when I'm hungry? And you try to be as descriptive as possible. Or
Mhm.
it feels empty, or it feels like it's kind of bubbly, or it makes noise, or maybe like I know I start to get angry. So you describe the sensation of being hungry. How do I know that I'm thirsty? Try to describe in as much detail as what that feels like in the body when you're thirsty. How do I know that I need to go to the bathroom? Super weird one. Like people are like, I don't want to do that, but it's just again more awareness of those sensations. Those are basic things we do every day. And tired. You could add tired in there too. Four
Mhm.
things we all do every day. Get curious, play around with that, and then you can move on to, okay, so what are some other feelings I know that I'm experiencing a lot right now? Angry. Okay, now how do I notice what anger feels like in my body? So that that process just gets sped up, because that's the work here is it's the noticing, but helping us understand and realize what's happening quicker and quicker and quicker. So yeah, I might need to take a moment to go, what am I feeling? But it's less challenging to get that because I've developed a template in my mind. This plus this plus this plus this in my body typically means angry. And then it might also mean I'm angry and I'm sad,
I
or
love
I'm angry and I want to love on you. And that's the thing. Like sometimes when my kid hits me in the face, I am angry. Today, my authentic expression was I felt sad because I felt like I had tears in my eyes and I could recognize that. So that's just a quick little fun way to develop that skill.
I've been writing notes actually, so I really love it. I think I remember once I told my daughter, I'm actually just really disappointed. And she's like, Mom, that is the worst thing you can say to a child. Now I feel really bad. And I said, but it reflected. I wasn't angry. I just said I'm disappointed because that's how I was feeling. And it shifted the energy straight away. Instead of her getting frustrated, she acknowledged it. So I think that's a big word, the acknowledgement of the child and the parent using these words instead of faking it or getting angry. So those were really amazing, helpful tips. As I said, I had lots of notes. I'm sure the listeners do too. And as parents practice these strategies, they'll likely see positive changes, right, in both their children's and their own emotional regulation too, as we mentioned.
Yes, and I would just say it takes time. So parents sometimes do this. They're like, I name my feeling to my kid, nothing happens. It's not something you're doing to them. It's repatterning, which takes time and repetition. And it is a slower approach, but it gives you lasting changes rather than like laying down the hammer and being like, that's my way or the highway. Sometimes that can get you like a quick response out of fear because they're like, okay, like I'm going to go because you're threatening me to take something away from me. Okay, like I'll do what you want me to do. But it doesn't really teach them anything in the long run versus this is a longer, slower approach. It's not a requirement that you get it right every time either. That's the beauty of it. So it's just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And kids will just start regulating themselves. It's so cool. It's amazing.
I'm honestly excited to start. And it's, as you said, it might take a little bit longer, but it's a lifelong learning from, I guess, from very early on until adulthood, really for the rest of your life. So it's worth putting in that time, right? Michelle, this has been honestly super valuable conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on how parents can be more aware of their emotions and be more authentic with their children. And before we go, where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, so my website, kind of where all my stuff lives, is M as in Michelle, W as in Wayman, counseling.care, CARE. I also have an Instagram profile where I post fun educational videos and pictures at MW Counseling and Coaching. And then I do also have a Facebook group that's just a free parent support group called Brain-Based Parenting Education and Support.
Oh, I think I'll jump in there. So thank you
It's
so much.
just an online community, and I share stuff there and like to have discussions with parents. So
And for our listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to check out Levelty. It's a great app to add more structure and fun to your parenting journey. Stay tuned for more episodes of parenting issues. And until next time, remember, it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to ask for help. Thank you so much.